We all want to make great content, which means that we have to better understand our audience. So in this episode, we'll talk about how to understand your audience's needs, how to use a free resource to be helpful for your audience, and how to organize the mountains of content that you generate with your podcast. So welcome into It's Not Just Talking. I'm your executive producer, Vince Quinn, here to help you sharpen your podcast strategy, improve your production processes, and build your hosting skills so that you can put more time back into your business. And today, we're talking with Sami Bedell-Mulhern. She founded The First Click to help nonprofits grow their online fundraising. With experience in the nonprofit space, which dates back to 2006, Sami has done everything from development to event planning, which is why in 2017, she launched her own company to expand her impact, and she joins us here today. Here's our conversation. Talking today with somebody whose show that I have been on and now gets to come on with me, the beauty of podcasting, the back and forth. Sami here from Digital Marketing Therapy. So, Sami, I want to get right to the root of something up front, which is your show is geared around helping nonprofits with marketing. And how did you get to that point? Because I think there's such a problem that people have when it comes to niche, finding that space, making that commitment. Like, how did you go on that journey to end up doing marketing for nonprofits?
Yeah, so I started right out of college, started my first nonprofit because I didn't know what else to do with myself. So I kind of was like, I have a passion for this, so I'm going to kind of do this thing. And it kind of happened in this perfect bubble that it should have never worked. But I was in my hometown where I knew a lot of people. I had no real experience. It wasn't what I went to school for, but I had a passion for it, and I happened to get the right people behind me to kind of help push it out. So we created a summer camp for the visual and performing arts for middle school students because I am from a really small town in Iowa and there just wasn't a lot of access. So I did that for kind of 4 years and just figured it out and just kind of did things as I went. Like I said, it worked in that environment because it was a small community where I already knew people. They already trusted me. So we had a lot of those connections. So it worked for us. But from there, kind of worked for nonprofits, big and small, worked for some, federal organizations, some think tanks in DC, did some research, did event planning for Boys and Girls Club. I mean, like I kind of did everything from beginning to end. So I just kind of picked things up as I went, never really knew exactly what I was doing. Don't tell my previous employers. But it was great. And I learned a lot. So when I was working for my dad for a while in his guitar company. And when I left that job, I was like, okay, well, now what do I want to do? So I decided I can do more to serve people by working and creating my own consulting business versus working for just one organization. So that was kind of how I kind of came in here. And I didn't just serve nonprofits in the beginning because, when you first start your business, it's like, I'm just going to take whatever comes to me. And that, again, kind of just refined and built where I'm at today and really kind of helping nonprofits specifically.
Yeah. Which is great because for us, it was the same struggle, right? Like we got the business started and initially we were just doing everything in digital content. It was, hey, you need a website? I'll put that together for you. You need social media stuff? Yeah. It was just like, what do you need? I can do everything. Yeah. And like, then it was like, oh, okay, well, I'm driving to locations to do photography and stuff. Like, what am I doing here? It's like, what is this? So yeah, I really started to scale everything back. But for you then to be naturally in the nonprofit space anyway, and then go specifically to marketing. I mean, why did you make that decision then to start your own consulting firm and practice marketing specifically? Like what kind of things gave you those signals that was the play?
So we started more in the website space. So we still do a lot of website design and development for organizations and nonprofits. But when COVID happened, what we really found is that it really shone the light on how kind of messy nonprofits are when it comes to their marketing. And the ones that were thriving were the ones that were taking care of their donors, that had monthly giving programs, or that were all of a sudden like a much needed resource, right? Like food banks and things of that nature. And the ones that were struggling just never had a plan for how they were communicating, how they were taking care of their people. And what we really started to notice was retention rates in nonprofits are awful. If you were in a for-profit business with those kinds of customer retention rates, you would be fired. But it's acceptable for some reason in this space. And so we just really saw the need for fundraisers to really understand that fundraising is marketing and that the two can go hand in hand, and that by adding in some digital marketing strategies, you can actually make your life easier and allow you to do your job better. So we just kind of started to see that come out and really found a passion partnering with a couple other amazing consultants and just trying. That's why it's digital marketing therapy, because nonprofits don't think they need to do marketing. And so we kind of are coaching them into understanding, like, you need to do this. This will help you. Come with us. It'll be fun.
Yeah, it's completely it, right? Yeah, because otherwise, how do people know that you exist and want to donate to you or volunteer or whatever it is, right? Like, I can imagine the amount of impact of just because there's so many causes out there. I mean, it's really amazing how many things there are. There's so many different foundations. The same way, like as a networking standpoint, the number of business groups and stuff that's out there is just crazy. So to be like, oh, I literally did not know that this foundation existed and people actually did this work, and oh, you're in my neighborhood or whatever. I mean, it's crazy. So,
Yes.
so when you're convincing people, then I mean, to get involved with a foundation and start solving the marketing problems, like you've obviously mentioned websites. What are some of the other main things, and maybe even selfishly, like what do you like doing the most when you get the chance to step
Yeah.
in with a charitable foundation?
We love a good website overhaul because a lot of times nonprofits just want to word vomit everything that they do. I think we do this as consultants too. Like, well, we can do this and we can do this, and we provide all the strategy, but we're not actually connecting with our audience in a way that's like, hey, like, what's in it for you? What do you want? And how can we help you be the champion, help you be the hero in our story, and help be the hero in the cause that we're solving, right? Like when you flip that around, it really makes it so much easier to have conversations with people because you're making it about them. You're not making it about all of the things that you do. And the things that you do are incredible, but it's overwhelming to people that aren't living in it day to day. It's overwhelming to you doing it every day, but imagine then like just laying all that on them. So we love the messaging part. We love making sure that websites are set up for conversion. But then my absolute favorite thing is email marketing. It is something that nonprofits do not take advantage of in the right way. And it's just such a quick win and such an easy way to kind of start getting the machine going with your existing audience while you're starting to build things everywhere else.
Okay, so one, small business owners take note of all of that too, right? Like the idea of just word vomiting, all the stuff that you do, people not understanding what you're talking about because they have no idea. If you're using like 3-letter acronyms and stuff like that, like nobody knows what that stuff is. They just don't. And so, yeah, simplicity is key. All right, so then let's talk about email marketing because, I mean, for a business owner, general marketing, and with a podcast too, right? Like having all of those things connected. What are some of the general things then with email marketing? What do you like about it? What are some favorite strategies, for example?
Geez. Okay. Well, I think there's so much. I think for me, what I love about it is the ability to personalize communication in mass. So if you're doing it well, if you're tracking your data correctly, if you're really paying attention to the work that you're doing, it's so much easier to send the right messages to the right groups of people and to engage. So I just love that software has made it so easy now for you to create these customized experiences for your email list without having to have like a big coding or a big design or a big, like, you don't have to have all this crazy back end experience to be able to do it. Anybody can do it. And so I think that that's one of the things that I love. And just the simple fact that it has the highest ROI of anything you can do in the digital space. So we all focus on social media, or we focus on all of these other things, and you spend all this time, but email is really where you're going to generate the most amount of money. Hands down across all industry, it doesn't matter as long as you're targeting the right people and staying in touch with them. So I know that's not a strategy, but I just think that's something that people don't think about. All of my clients are like, we don't have time to do a newsletter. I'm like, okay, well, what else are you doing? Well, we have to do all these social media posts. Well, okay, maybe you're spending your time in the wrong place.
Yeah. Okay. So honestly, why do you think that is? What is it about email marketing compared to everything else that gives you highest return on investment?
I think it's that personalization, and I think it's that opportunity to be able to share more of your story on an ongoing basis and connect with people for you to stay top of mind. So, even if if people aren't opening all of your emails, they're still seeing you show up in the inbox, and they're still like seeing your organization name. They're still saying, oh, okay, these people are connecting with me. They're providing value. I might see a social media post and that can reinforce it. But it's so much easier to control like where you're sending them, what the call to action is, how they can engage with you, even just the simple like just reply with hi and we'll call you and give you more information. Like, just there's so many things that you can do that makes it easy for the person on the other end to engage with you, and they feel more connected. They feel like they're getting something specific from you, but it has to be value add and it has to solve a problem for them and give them something. It can't just be all about you and what you're doing.
Yeah, no, that's all great. I mean, because for everything with me, let me step in, and I would like to almost lay on the couch and have you be my therapist for a moment. All right, so it is digital marketing therapy, so I'm putting you to work. I've got a newsletter, for example, and I've got a great open rate. So I'm getting like 60% opens on everything that I send out. But when I do certain calls to action, I'm not getting the kind of response that I would like. So what do you, in a general sense, what do you think I could do? What are some things that might help me get a better response from my audience who's clearly paying attention?
Yeah, so I would pay attention to the language you're using, and how you're delivering that call to action. So in our emails, we'll typically have the call to action in multiple different versions. So you might have a button that says like learn more, which is more, generic. I love to have fun with that in the voice of your brand. Check it out, or the goods are here, or whatever, makes sense, but like have more fun with it so that they're not just like, oh, okay, this is to learn more. The other thing that we'll do is hyperlink it in a couple different places and in a couple different ways. So hyperlinking an entire sentence that is talking about whatever that call to action is. If it's like you've got this really cool freebie that you're trying to encourage people to download, then maybe the sentence is like, we have 3 great resources to help you with your recycling at home. That whole sentence is hyperlinked, right? So it stands out on its own if somebody's skimming your email. And then you might also hyperlink it in a couple other places as well. So that way, no matter where people are in that email, they're getting that same call to action, that same ability to connect whenever it is that they're connecting with you on that email. The other reason why you might not get people clicking through is you have too many calls to action. So that's the other thing to pay attention to keep it simplified. So don't have more than 2 to 3. 3 is pushing it. So that people know exactly what to do. We're busy. We're scrolling, we're skimming. I want to know exactly what you need from me and keep it simple.
Okay. So yeah, if you got a newsletter, I would say rewind that, write some things down and put it to work. That's all great advice. So I love that. Now let's take this a little bit further, right? Because one of the things that I mentioned when we first got started with all this, I mean, you're showcasing all of this different expertise, and you just mentioned the free resources that you have. Something that I loved about listening to your show was in one of your most recent episodes, you like in the first minute, maybe you say, this show is brought to you by our free resources. And I love that. So first off, why did you make that decision to mention it up front like that? And what kind of impact has it had for you to have these kinds of free resources connected to the business?
Yeah. So last year we decided to theme our month. So every month had a core category that we were talking about. All of our episodes were focused on that. And then we also did a freebie with each month. If you go back to 2024's episodes, you'll hear me reference a specific resource in conjunction with what we're talking about that month. And that was for us to really test what does our audience care most about. They're all still on our website. You can still snag them all, but it just kind of helped us see which episodes are performing better, which topics are performing better, and which lead magnets and resources is our audience really needing. I reference it at the beginning because if somebody's like listening to the intro and they're like, I'm not really sure that I need this episode right now, at least they maybe made it through to that section. And even if they don't need to hear this episode, at least hopefully they're going to our resources to check it out. And I mention it often and regularly because people need to hear it regularly in order, like they might have listened to one episode and they weren't ready, but then now they're listening to another one and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So if we don't continually tell people that we have these things, we'd love to believe that everybody thinks about us all the time and remembers everything that we do and that we're the go-to place to help them with the problem they have. But that's just not the case. We have to tell them over and over again.
Oh, yeah. People just forget you exist. And I do that all the time with like different, right? It's like even with podcasts, right? Because for me, it's like, oh, you're a podcast guy. So you know every podcast and whatever. It's like I have certain shows that I like, but even for the shows that I like and listen to, sometimes I will not listen for like 8 months. And then it just randomly pops up in my feed again. For whatever reason, the algorithms decide to like show me that new episode is at the top. And I'll go, oh yeah, okay, I love this show, and it's like I haven't listened to it in 8 months. I've given them literally nothing, and now I'm back. So yeah, that constant fight for attention, reminding everybody, all those different things, completely true, and absolutely something that people need. So I love that you do that with the free resources. And same thing, right? Like for everybody listening, to have those free resources, what you're doing, which is great, it's on your website, it's in the podcast. Like as much as you can get it in multiple places, the same way you want to get your show into all those places, as many platforms as possible. Yeah, get the word out. This is lead magnets, right? Like this is, hey, how are you getting information, staying in touch with people? And then for you, I figure it's moving them to the newsletter, right? Like you get these people,
Correct.
they get the resource, they go to the newsletter. So yeah, like very clean.
Well,
and yeah, go ahead.
I just want to it goes back to also like being clear. So it's in the footer of all of my emails. It's in the text of all my show notes, in my YouTube channels, like our free resources. Like, but that's because we've decided that email is the thing that's going to help us drive our business. And so I think you really have to pay attention to what your focus is and then drill down, because it's not about trying to tell them everything. It's trying to get them in, and then you can continue to drip out that content. If you don't get them in the first place, you have no chance to communicate.
Yeah. So I love that. It's completely spot on. So, okay. So from that standpoint, because obviously all of this has been connected to the idea, and something that I really like about what you do is just the relentless attention to your audience's needs. For all the time that you spent with this, I mean, just on a base level, like, describe your approach to understanding your audience.
Well, it's a combination of things. It's paying attention to how, like, the comments people make. It's paying attention to the responses that I get to my emails, like the content that I'm sharing and what people like and don't like. I'm also I don't know what the term is. I guess I'm a guest expert, whatever, doesn't matter. I'm in this membership program that my best buddy Patrick Kirby and it's his baby. He started it. It's his membership for nonprofits. And then he's graciously had me come in and be his marketing expert. So I do a lot of work alongside nonprofits in that world. So we literally have weekly Q&As with whoever wants to show up. They can ask whatever the questions they want. I'm the marketing expert. He's the offline fundraiser and event. So that is really also a lot of where I get my market research, because, what common themes we're hearing is what I'm like, okay, this is where people are struggling and where we need to have conversation. We also just started doing a live Website Wednesday, quick little training on LinkedIn. And so I'm sharing some of those topics and just kind of watching to see, when I invite a bunch of people, which ones get more engagement and which ones don't. So it's easy lift for me. I just show up and talk for 20 minutes and answer questions. So I think just some of those things can make it easy to learn what your audience needs quickly without having to just have a ton of phone calls or just calling a bunch of people. It's just paying attention to what people are telling you and listening to what they're telling you and taking it in.
Yeah, which is one of those, it's funny how hard that is at times, because it's so much of like, right? It's like, oh, well, I'm the content creator, so it's my ideas and my vision and my strategy. And sometimes people are like, can you please just tell me what equipment I need to buy? Like, can you please, what kind of microphone do I need? Like, that's it, man. Just please tell me. So yeah, it's like, that's one of those things that honestly I'm trying to get better at, and which is why I'm so glad I get to talk to you about it, because I mean, yeah, like, and that's part of my issue with the newsletter, right? Like, I would love to get more responses from things, as much as because the open rates are relatively pretty consistent. So it's like, okay, well, people at least showing up, but then, okay, how can I take it to a better level of, oh, they're more into this, they're more into that, I'm going to give them more episodes on this, and like finding those ways to engage. I mean, I love that you're doing lives on LinkedIn. Like, what was the whole thought behind that? And how has that experience been doing live shows on LinkedIn?
Well, I've only done a couple. I mean, it's just easy to do. So I'm like, what is low lift easy that I can do? Because we have a goal this year of really pushing out our digital products and selling we have a pretty aggressive plan for the second half of the year, as far as like some launches that we have and some things that we want to do with our digital resources. So it was really just, I need to do more to build trust with the general audience. And a lot of my people are on LinkedIn. So I'm like, I can do this. And then now we're going to download them and repurpose them on YouTube. And it's just more easy content. Like for me, it's like, what content can I create that doesn't require me to do a lot of work? It takes me a lot more work to write a blog post than it does to show up for a conversation. right? And to have a conversation. So it's more, how can I continue to build that know, like, and trust in front of my actual audience in a way that's easy lift.
Yeah, and that's the podcast too, right? Like that's the whole beauty of
Correct.
it, and that's why I'm preaching about this thing constantly. And I pretty much bet my life on it. Is just, hey, I'm doing one show. I show up, I do one episode. I'm getting 3, 4, 5 clips, like whatever we need out of that. I'm getting the transcript, which is becoming social posts, and you can turn it into carousels, and it can be episode by episode, becoming a free marketing handout. For example, like
Absolutely.
There's so many things that you can tie together with all of it, and to be able to just, especially for me, because as much as I can write, I don't love it. I'm able to do it, so I do it. But it's like I want to talk first, and I think I'm more engaging that way anyway. So to be able to get in this spot and just say, all right, all of the foundational marketing stuff that we want to do and the relationship building that we want to do is through that. Like, it's such a relief for us, and just the natural organic impact that it's had on us. We've only been doing the show since October of last year.
Wow.
So it's a new show, but the people that I've met, the quality of those connections, the impacts I've seen on LinkedIn, where I particularly go out of my way to follow and connect with people, and all, like it's been incredible how much of a difference it's made, and how many more referrals I'm getting, just because people that aren't even clients, but I just know them. They're like, oh, well, somebody came up and said they were looking for help with the podcast, and I know you help businesses with their podcast. And it's like, yes, it's coming together. You know what I mean? It's just, it's all such a relief.
Well, let me give you a little, I don't, maybe you're doing this, I don't know. But what we do with our podcast is couple things. So now we're live streaming our episodes when they go live on Tuesdays. That gets live streamed to LinkedIn as well. So we have more video content on there because LinkedIn's video. We repurpose our newsletter as a LinkedIn newsletter also, because then we can tag our guests in those posts. And then what we're also doing is we embed our YouTube video in there, and we add related podcasts that you might find useful. And we list 3 more podcasts that are related to the episode that we're talking about in that newsletter. And again, then tagging those guests in it. So you might have been on an episode 6 months ago, but we're bringing it back because it's relevant to our audience. And then I'm tagging you. So you're getting notified that we shared your podcast episode. So hopefully you'll share that newsletter post again. So like, we're continuing then to repurpose our podcast information over and over and over again, and highlighting our guests over and over and over again.
That's fantastic, because for me, I do get the newsletter and I put it on LinkedIn. That's definitely been a sticking point recently. So that's all moving well and good. It's been nice. And frankly, I pretty much doubled my audience once I put it on LinkedIn. So if you have an existing newsletter already and you haven't put it on LinkedIn, like, why aren't you?
1,000%.
Because it just and I didn't even realize it, which was the funny thing, because I started it, I set it up, and I was like, okay, and I'll just have to figure out how I want to get the word out and who I want to invite. And then I just realized that it did it for me as soon as I created it, and suddenly I had like 150 people that were subscribed to my newsletter on LinkedIn. I was like, holy crap. So it was a shock.
If you're listening to this, chances are that your business podcast is struggling, but you're not sure what's holding it back. That's why I created the Podcast Compass Quiz. And in just 5 minutes, you'll get clarity on what's working, what's not, and where to focus your energy next. Best part? It's completely free. So hit the link in the show notes to take the quiz now.
Here's my follow-up for you, because the one thing I'm not doing is those other related episodes. So going in your backlog and mentioning, hey, here's some other things that, you might appreciate if you like this episode. So how are you keeping track of that? Like, what is your depth of catalog? How are you analyzing that information, or are you just kind of searching it out? What does that look like for you?
I have a master spreadsheet with all of my episodes. So we're coming up on 300 episodes this year. So we've been doing it for a while. So I have just, that spreadsheet has literally every episode in it, titles, descriptions, guests. So what I'll do is just go back through and look for episodes that I know were related. It's not so much like which was the most popular or anything of that nature, but it's also like, I'm sure you have this experience. There's some guests that are just super dynamic, and some that are, provide good value, but like, they're okay.
Yeah, the entertainment aspect is not there. Yeah.
Yeah. So those ones just naturally stand out to me. So I'm like, okay. And I also have some of my friends that I just want to highlight, and I know that they're working on something really cool, and so I want to push their podcast episode out. But really, it comes from a place first of service. So what is actually going to be related to this topic and help them? And so just going through those episodes, it's just kind of a search thing. Either I know the name or I know the topic and I've got those keywords in my description. So it's easy to just do a search in the spreadsheet.
Yeah, which I recommend to everybody as well, by the way, just to have something to say, oh, okay, these are the episodes we did. Here's some general things that we covered, because that backlog, I mean, even if you have 300, like you're just getting started with the spreadsheet after 300 episodes, like do what you can to try to track the information. Because like Sami, like you just said, I mean, the ways that you can repurpose that, or if it turns out that, depending on your business, maybe something happens in the news, right? And now you have clips from a certain episode with a previous guest, and that's relevant. So now get those things, bring those up. Like there's so much you can do, the themed months, all those kinds of ways that you can integrate your previous content and get more out of it, which then you don't have to write new posts and make new content
Correct.
and do all of those things. Like, yeah, let it do the work for you. That's the beauty of the catalog, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and I would say if for some reason you haven't started your podcast yet, do the same thing if you have a blog. We have spreadsheets for our blogs as well. The other thing that we include in that spreadsheet is what is our call to action on that page, and anything that's time sensitive, so that when we do make a change or an update or remove a lead magnet or add a lead magnet, we know exactly what pages to go to on that content to update it. So that's the other thing that's really magical about those spreadsheets, is knowing what's on those pages. So I don't have to like literally go through every single show notes blog post on my website and like figure out what needs to be changed. So
love it. Okay, so let's keep the train rolling a little bit with marketing with podcasts, because from the idea, a lot of people, I mean, everybody's got a show. They're looking for ways to get out there, get more people to listen. It's what everybody wants, right? But for you as a marketing expert with a podcast, how do you approach marketing the podcast? What works for you? What do you like, or even don't like?
I think for me, it's consistency. I think where I struggle the most is consistency in promoting my podcast, because there'll be times where we just get super busy and then we forget to share and post and whatever. So I think it's putting a system in place. So like when podcast is recorded, this is the next step. And then when it's edited, these are all of the pieces that need to be created, like understanding what that process is and just doing it at once. Because if you're waiting till the podcast is live and then you're going to start to put the materials together, like that's when everything gets lost. So just create a system of like, when you batch edit, if you batch edit, I love batching, but if you batch edit the podcast, then that goes to the next person who does like the batch of all the graphics and the content creation. Then it goes to the next, whoever, to batch all of the landing pages or, show notes pages. So I think little things like that can make a big difference in your consistency in promoting, because while it would be great if everybody just listened to your podcast without you sharing it, that's just not the way that it works. So I would say that. And then I would also say one of the things that I love is like repurpose. So we'll do like multiple shorts that go on Pinterest, LinkedIn, YouTube, Reels, and Stories, right? So we'll share the same thing to Stories and then publish it later on Reels, like whatever. We'll use the same thing over and over and over again. We create carousel posts, like you said. We create static posts. It's just a whole lot of things. And then I think it's being clear with your guests, if you can, about making it easy for them to share, because they're going to share it more likely if it's easy for them. If they get the materials and all they have to do is kind of publish it on their network. Don't make them work for it if you have guests on your podcast. But yeah, that's what I would recommend. And then I think the other thing is not having don't live and die by your stats. Because I think sometimes we look at our stats and we're like, oh, well, I thought that was really good and nobody cared about it. And then sometimes you'll push stuff out and people are like loving it. And you're going, oh, I thought that was okay, but I didn't think it was like going to be our best episode ever. So, I think taking that away, that ego away, and just continue to be consistent. And then you'll see that growth.
Yeah. And to go to that idea of the social posting in particular, because I think that is one of the hardest things that everybody deals with, is coming up with, oh my God, I got to get all these posts out, and doing that consistently, and how many times should I be posting and all of that. Well, one of the things that I recommend, and I literally said this on a coaching call yesterday, was that, okay, this woman is a business owner. She is completely swamped with time. She has nothing. And so she has weeks where she doesn't even post the episode at all. Like it'll go up, but she won't promote it literally once. So what I told her was, I was like, look, don't worry about trying to get to that standard next week. What you want to do is build out a lead. And like you kind of said in a different area before, think 6 weeks ahead and think, you know what, in an ideal world, what does it look like? Okay, I want to get 2 posts out a week that are on these platforms. All right, aim, 4, 5, 6 weeks, however long it needs to be, and start working towards, from that point, getting that consistency, because then you're not feeling that under the gun nature of it, and it's just as you get time to build the lead, it makes it easier for you to maintain it. Or when you have those moments where it's like, all right, I'm going to dive in and catch up, you're doing that with 4 weeks of time to maneuver. So that freedom, that simplicity, the lack of stress, I think, is really the thing that makes it easier, because when you're under the gun, it's
100%.
It's frustrating. Like, you just don't want to do work that way. So then it's like, all right, well, forget it. I'm just not going to post it this week, because you literally feel better not posting it all than actually promoting it, which is funny how it works, but it's totally the truth. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and January was terrible for me because my schedule was literally filled with podcast recordings. Like, I was recording 2 to 3 episodes sometimes a day, but like, it was intense. But I'm pretty much recorded now through June. So, and I don't know when this episode is going live, but we're at the end of February, right? So it's really great because now I'm not recording as much, and we're just working on creating all of the content and getting all of that done. So I would also say, like, in your seasonality of your business, understand when you have quieter times, like, that's the perfect time to, like, really, like you said, schedule a ton of stuff content wise, get it all done so you're ready to go. And then you can focus on the other parts of your business. Like, we all have seasons. So pay attention to that and organize your recordings in those quieter seasons.
Yeah, no, completely it. Like, I know accountants, for example, don't try to make any content at the beginning. Like, after January, you're not making content. Like, you're going to be slammed until April, and it is what it is. And you have to know that. So yeah, having those kinds of things in your back pocket of, this is the worst time for me, which means my busy time for production is the months before that, so that I can get everything done and I don't have to think about it, but you are consistently promoting and getting the word out. Yeah, 100%. So I love all of that. Now, real quick, I mean, you've gotten to just about 300, and I guess at this point, because you have so many recorded, you've done over 300 episodes at this point. So for the people who are aspiring to that, because that's a major landmark. I mean, so many people, the stat that I've read is, I think it's 93% of people don't make it to 100 episodes or 2 years.
Yeah.
So you're literally into the 7% of podcasts, period, which is... Yeah, I mean, and way above that, because that's just 100. You 3x that. So, like, from the people who want to get to that point, you know, what's the basic wisdom of how you've gotten to this stage?
Well, I mean, listen, we have done it in a lot of different ways. We had a period of time where we were doing 2 podcasts a week, and then we had a period of time where we were doing them every other week, and then we had some time where we took a few months off. So I think it's a combination of giving yourself the space to still be creative so you don't burn out. So if your podcast isn't serving you, then something's wrong. Like, and I don't mean like financially. I mean, that's a whole thing too, but I don't mean like financially and like whatever. I just mean, if as a host, if you're not still energized by the podcast, then it's not serving you and you're not serving your listeners. So I think the first thing is just giving yourself that grace to say, okay, yeah, we're going to try this thing. And if it works, great. And if not, oh, well, like, your audience is not going to abandon you if you make shifts or change or like adjust the way that you do things. So I would say that, I would say the second thing is making sure that it's in a format that you actually like and enjoy. Because we decided this year, I hate doing solo episodes. They're the worst thing on the planet. I'm not doing them anymore. And so that's why we got really intentional about, I'm for me. I'm not saying if your podcast is solo episode, it's bad. I'm saying for me, I don't enjoy doing them. And so we made that's why we recorded so much in January, because I was like, I'm not doing it anymore. And so we made a conscious decision to really make sure we're booking a lot of guests. And then I would just say, like, it's something I like to do. Like I said earlier, I don't want to write blog posts. I know I need to generate content on a regular basis. So this is the platform that I've chosen, and I'm just going to keep doing it. And I think the other piece for why it works for me is because it is so much of the content that generates everything else in my business. So if I don't have it, then what am I going to replace it with?
Yeah.
And I don't have a good answer for that. So
that's a hell of a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to post on social media all the time. Okay, so now how are you going to come up with all of that content? Like that's harder to me. I mean, it's so easy to just be like, here's the podcast, here's the topic, great. That message applies everywhere. So now I can just reformat it rather than say, okay, I need to come up with an interesting carousel and let me come up with something in thin air that fits a carousel, right? It's just, it's exhausting to me. My brain does not work that way. And on some level, I'm allergic to social media, which is why I want to make it as easy as possible. Right? It's exhausting. And for me, it's like I get home and my wife will be like, Vince, so I DM'd you something on Instagram. And you haven't seen it, have you? And it's like, no, I have not. I have not checked. I don't want to look at it. It's exhausting. But yeah, so I don't know, just finding those different ways to make it easy to navigate. So I love that you just are very blunt about it of like, hey, I don't like doing solo episodes. That's not what I'm going to do. But you know the value of it, and you know all the good ways to get the benefits. Like you said with the newsletter, tagging all the people and repurposing that way. Like that's all fantastic stuff. So that's exactly what I expected, by the way. So this, as a guest episode, has been fantastic. Just a ton of great information. Your passion for everything that you do is so evident. Just like I said, being on your show and following along, I think it's great what you're doing. So just personally, I'm a fan of everything you got going on. I am so glad that you've been a part of the show. And for all the people that are listening and also like, yeah, Sami rules. I need to keep up with Sami. Where can people find you, Sami?
Yeah, LinkedIn is definitely where I'm most active. But you can find all of our free resources at thefirstclick.net. And yes, they are mostly geared towards nonprofits, but really marketing is marketing. So I'm sure you'll find some things of value there as well. And yeah, check out the Digital Marketing Therapy podcast.
There you go. So check it out. Sami, again, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Thanks for listening to the show. Make sure to subscribe to the newsletter to get more podcast insights. That link is in the show notes. And if you're feeling stuck with your podcast, let's figure it out together. Book a free 10-minute chat with me. The link to do that is also in the show notes. Talk to you next week.